The words hit me like a truck, rattling in my chest, but the smug grin on Jason's face made it 10 times worse. "You're making Jason the CEO?" My voice bounced off the mahogany walls of the dining room. Surely I had misheard. Surely this was some kind of joke. I scanned the table, waiting for someone, anyone, to speak up, to tell me this wasn't real. But my parents' faces were carved from stone, unreadable, unwavering. "Sweetheart," my mother said, exasperated, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "Jason has the leadership qualities needed for this." "You're too rigid, too serious," my father added, nodding as if that settled everything. "You're great with numbers, Kelly, but Jason, he inspires people." I let out a short, humorless laugh. Jason? Inspiring? The same Jason who had never held a real job in his life? The one who had burned through his trust fund twice, only to come crawling back home for more? This was the person they were handing our family's business to? The company our grandfather had built with his bare hands? "But I've been working at Anderson Home Goods for years," I protested. "I helped restructure the supply chain. I negotiated new contracts. Dad cut me off with a dismissive wave of his hand. "You're a good worker, Kelly, but Jason's a natural leader. You should be happy for him." Jason stretched back in his chair, lacing his fingers behind his head, his smirk widening. "Yeah, Kel, don't take it so personally. You can still be involved, just, in a support role." Support role. The words stung like a slap to the face. I had given my blood, sweat, and tears to this company. Late nights, early mornings, endless problem solving, while my so-called leader of a brother partied his way through his 20s. I turned to my mother, hoping for a lifeline. "Mom, please." She patted my hand as if I were a child. "You should focus on something else, sweetheart. Maybe start a little side business of your own." Something inside me snapped. "You want me to start my own business?" My voice was dangerously calm. "Fine, but don't come crawling back when Jason runs this place into the ground." Jason snorted. "Relax, sis. I got this." I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled over. Without another word, I walked out of that dining room, out of that house, and out of their lives. At least, that's what I thought. Because years later, they would come knocking on my door, and this time, I would be the one calling the shots. Walking out of that house felt like ripping off a bandage, but instead of relief, all I felt was rage. Not the kind that makes you scream and throw things. No, this was the kind that settled deep in your bones, the kind that fueled every late night, every early morning, every ounce of effort poured into proving someone wrong. I had spent my entire life playing by the rules, following the path my parents had laid out for me. I worked tirelessly for our family business, only to be discarded like an afterthought. And for what? So Jason could waltz in, take credit for my work, and pretend he knew what he was doing? Fine. If they thought I was only good enough for a side business, then I would build one so successful that they would choke on their words. For weeks, I brainstormed, scribbling notes in my journal, researching markets. What could I create that was truly mine? And then it hit me. I had spent years studying supply chains, product sourcing, and customer trends. I knew what worked and what didn't. I had personally witnessed the rise of eco-friendly, high-quality home products, a market my family's outdated company had completely ignored. They still relied on old-school wholesalers, never bothering to adapt to the new wave of direct-to-consumer e-commerce. What if I launched my own brand? A home goods line focused on sustainability, affordability, and modern design. Not the cheap, mass-produced junk my parents' company stocked, but something fresh. A brand that made homes beautiful without breaking the bank. There was only one problem. I was broke. Unlike Jason, I didn't have a trust fund or wealthy parents willing to throw money at me. Everything I had was what I could scrape together from my savings. I took a deep breath and did the scariest thing I had ever done. I cashed out my retirement fund. It wasn't much, just enough to cover my first round of product samples and a small batch of inventory. I worked day and night, designing my first collection, minimalist, high-quality, eco-friendly home essentials. A factory in Vietnam agreed to produce my designs in small batches. I found a reliable logistics partner. I built my website from scratch, taught myself digital marketing, and launched an online store. And then I waited. I should have known my family wouldn't support me. When I casually mentioned my idea at a cousin's wedding, Jason practically choked on his Wait, let me get this straight, he said between laughs. You're selling what? Bamboo cutting boards and organic dish towels? The whole table erupted in laughter. My mother smiled sympathetically. Kelly, sweetheart, businesses are hard. Maybe you should just come back to Anderson Home Goods. I'm sure Jason could find a place for you. I clenched my fists under the table. Thanks, Mom, but I think I'll manage. And I did. More than they could ever imagine. Within a year, my brand exploded. Social media influencers raved about my products. Orders skyrocketed. Investors came knocking. While Anderson Home Goods struggled to stay relevant, my company became a household name. And then came the inevitable. Jason had driven our family's business into the ground. Their once thriving empire was crumbling, drowning in debt and poor management. That's when the phone calls started. Kelly, sweetheart. Mom's voice was saccharine, but I could hear the desperation beneath it. We need your help. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile curling on my lips. Oh? You mean with my little side business? Silence, then a sigh. We made a mistake. Yes, they had. And now, the roles had reversed. This time I was the one in charge. I smiled as I watched my parents and Jason take in the sight of my headquarters. Vast glass walls, buzzing employees, and an atmosphere that screamed success. It was everything Anderson Home Goods wasn't. Modern, thriving, and built on real leadership, not nepotism. My mother looked around in awe, her usual air of superiority replaced by quiet disbelief. Wow, Kelly, this is impressive, she murmured, trailing off as if the words physically pained her. Jason, on the other hand, looked like he had swallowed something sour. He shifted uncomfortably, clearly unprepared for just how much I had outgrown him, outgrown all of them. Dad cleared his throat, the weight of his pride and desperation making his voice tight. We need your help, Kelly, he admitted, his gaze finally meeting mine. Anderson Home Goods is in trouble. Sales have plummeted, investors are backing out, and Jason's strategies just haven't worked. Jason bristled. The economy is bad for everyone, he snapped, but his words lacked the conviction they once held. Even he knew he had failed. I leaned back in my sleek leather chair, steepling my fingers. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice calm but laced with amusement. You turned me away, laughed at my ideas, told me to start a little side business, and now you're asking me to save you. Mom pursed her lips. Sweetheart, it's not like that. Oh, it's exactly like that, I interrupted. And let's not rewrite history. You didn't just doubt me, you belittled me. You handed my life's work to Jason, a man who has never worked for anything in his life. Jason scoffed, his face red with frustration. Oh, get off your high horse, Kelly. You got lucky. Some influencer gave you free publicity. That's not real business sense. I laughed, genuinely amused by his ignorance. Luck? I echoed. You think luck built this empire? I worked while you partied. I strategized while you guessed your way through decisions. I built something sustainable, something people trust. And that's why I'm standing here today while you're drowning. Dad exhaled sharply. Kelly, please. We need a partner to pull the company back up. Investors would feel reassured if you joined us. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. So you don't need me, you need my name, my success. Silence. They knew I was right. I stood up, slowly walking around my desk, savoring the power shift. Here's my counteroffer, I said, stopping in front of Jason. I buy Anderson Home Goods. I take full control. Jason steps down, permanently. Jason shot up from his chair. No way in hell. Sit down, Dad barked, his voice filled with an authority I hadn't heard in years. Jason shut his mouth, fuming but obedient. Dad turned back to me, his expression unreadable. You'd buy us out? Yes, I confirmed. I'll absorb the company into my brand. Keep the name if I want to. Restructure everything. I glanced at Jason, smirking. And I'll make sure my lack of leadership skills don't get in the way. Mom wrung her hands together. But what about us? We built that company. You threw it away the day you chose Jason over me, I said coldly. This is the best offer you'll get. Dad looked at Jason, then at me, the reality sinking in. He had no choice. The company was failing. Without me, it was doomed. Finally, he nodded. Fine, we'll negotiate the terms. I smiled, extending my hand. Smart decision, Dad. As he shook it, Jason stormed out of the room, his tantrum echoing down the hall. Mom looked torn between anger and regret. And me? I felt nothing but satisfaction. I had built an empire from nothing. I had risen from their rejection, their doubt. And now, I wasn't just taking my rightful place. I was taking everything. Impressive. Dad cleared his throat. Yes, very impressive. But let's get to the point. Jason, though clearly sulking, had his arms crossed, his jaw tight, refusing to make eye contact. I took my time, savoring the moment. Finally, I leaned back and said, "Let me get this straight. You're asking me, the daughter you dismissed, the one whose business you mocked, to come fix your mess." Dad hesitated. Well, when you put it that way, that is the way it is, I snapped. Jason rolled his eyes. Look, just name your price, okay? We need you to bring the company back on its feet. I laughed, actually laughed. Oh, Jason, you don't get it, do you? I leaned forward. I don't need your company. I built my own. And guess what? It's bigger than yours ever was. Jason's face turned red. That's not true. I pulled out my phone, opening my financial dashboard. I turned the screen toward them. 12,340,000 in revenue. Mom gasped. Dad paled. Jason looked like he wanted to throw up. That's impossible, he muttered. I grinned. It's not just possible, it's my reality. Dad exhaled sharply. Kelly, please, we're running out of time. The bank is threatening to seize assets. I tapped my chin, pretending to think. All right, I'll help. Their faces lit up, but I wasn't done. On one condition. They leaned forward. You work for me. Jason frowned. What do you mean? I smiled sweetly. You need jobs, don't you? Well, I have openings. You can work here, but not as executives. I leaned in, my voice dropping. You can start as unpaid interns. The silence was deafening. Jason shot up. You've got to be joking, I shrugged. Take it or leave it. Mom looked at Dad, desperate. Jason's jaw clenched. They had no choice. Fine, Dad finally said, his voice shaking with shame. I stood up, extending my hand. Welcome to your new reality. Hope you enjoy fetching coffee. The first day of their internship was pure gold. Jason, the golden child, the hand-picked CEO, stood in front of me in my office, wearing a cheap button-up shirt, clearly unaccustomed to ironing his own clothes. His usual smugness was gone. He glared at the floor, arms crossed like a sulking teenager. My father, once so proud and authoritative, stood stiffly beside him. My mother, who had spent her life believing Jason could do no wrong, looked like she might faint. I let the silence drag on, let them feel the weight of what they had become. Finally, I leaned back. Let's talk about your new responsibilities. Jason scoffed. This is humiliating. You're doing this just to mess with us. I smirked. No, Jason. I'm doing this because it's what you deserve. But by all means, if you'd rather be unemployed, there's the door. He clenched his jaw, nostrils flaring. He hated this, and that made it even better. Dad cleared his throat, forcing a strained smile. Kelly, honey, let's be reasonable. Surely there's a better use of our skills than menial work. I arched an eyebrow. Skills? You mean the ones that ran your business into the ground? A flicker of shame crossed his face, but he said nothing. All right then. I picked up a sheet of paper. Here are your assignments. I handed each of them a printout. Jason scanned his and immediately turned red. You want me to organize the warehouse? I nodded. That's right. We just expanded, and I need someone to do inventory checks. Since you're such a natural leader, I'm sure you can figure it out. Jason looked like he wanted to throw the paper in my face. And what about us? Mom asked hesitantly. I smiled sweetly. Mom, I put you in customer service. Her eyes widened in horror. Customer service? That's right. Customers will be calling, emailing, and leaving reviews all day. Your job is to make sure they're happy. She looked physically ill. And Dad, I turned to him, you'll be handling supplier relations. You're responsible for cold calling manufacturers, negotiating rates, and making sure we never have delays. Dad blinked, processing. You want me to call suppliers? That's grunt work. I grinned. Exactly. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my desk. Let's be honest. If Jason had succeeded, you wouldn't be here right now. You'd still be patting his back, telling him how brilliant he is. You'd still be looking down on me like I was nothing. Dad opened his mouth to argue but hesitated, because he knew I was right. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the skyline of my success, the office buildings. The streets bustled with people carrying shopping bags, some of which contained products from my brand. I had built something real, something that mattered. Meanwhile, my parents had lost everything. And now, they were working for me. By betting on the wrong person, I turned back to them. You know what hurts the most? I said quietly. My mother blinked, swallowing hard. What? It's not the fact that you chose Jason. It's not even the fact that you didn't believe in me. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. It's the fact that when I walked away, you didn't care. Their faces fell. You didn't call, you didn't check in. You didn't even ask how I was doing. You just dismissed me like I was an afterthought. A heavy silence stretched between us. The weight of my words settled in, suffocating. I could see it in their eyes now. The guilt, the realization that they had burned this bridge long before I ever set it on fire. My father rubbed his temples, his voice strained. We thought you'd come back, that you'd fail and realize you needed us. I let out a bitter laugh. Wow, that says everything, doesn't it? My mother's voice was shaky. Kelly, we never wanted to hurt you. Then why did you? I challenged. Her lips parted, but no words came out, because there wasn't an answer. There was no excuse that could make up for years of neglect. I walked back to my desk and picked up a small stack of papers. Since you're looking for another chance, let me make you an offer. I tossed the papers onto the table in front of them. They hesitated before picking them up. My father's brows furrowed as he read. What is this? I smiled. A severance package. You resign from my company permanently, and in return, I make a generous one-time payout so you don't have to struggle. My mother's face twisted in shock. You're paying us to leave? That's right, I said smoothly, crossing my arms. Because I don't trust you, and I don't want you involved in my business. My father's grip on the paper tightened. This is insulting. No, Dad. What was insulting was spending my whole life being treated like I wasn't good enough for you. My mother's eyes watered. Is this really what you want? I met her gaze, steady and unwavering. It's what I need. My father clenched his jaw, staring at the papers for a long moment. His pride was warring with reality, But in the end, reality won. He exhaled slowly and muttered, "Fine, we'll take it." My mother's lips trembled, but she nodded. "If this is what will make you happy, sweetheart, then we'll go." A pang of something, almost like sadness, hit me. This was the final goodbye. But I didn't stop them because I was done waiting for them to love me the way I deserved. They signed the papers, stood up, gave me one last lingering look, and then they left. I watched from my office window as they walked out of my building, out of my life. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I sat in my office long after they had gone, staring at the signed severance agreement on my desk. It was over. For years, I had wanted their approval, their validation. I had wanted them to see me, to finally recognize that I was worth something. But now, I realized something far more important. I didn't need them. I had built my own empire without their support. I had succeeded despite them, not because of them. And that was the greatest victory of all. In the weeks that followed, things settled into a new kind of normal. Jason disappeared. No surprise there. Last I heard, he was bouncing between different failed startup ideas, still chasing easy money instead of doing real work. My parents, now free of the burden of their company, moved to a quiet town far away, their reputations in shambles. And me? I kept building, kept growing. My business thrived, because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. I was never the failure. They were. My parents moved out of state after signing the severance agreement, taking the payout and settling in a smaller house far from the city. I heard little from them after that, and honestly, I preferred it that way. No more weight of expectations pressing down on me. No more waiting for approval that would never come. I was done chasing their validation. With my family out of the picture, I poured myself into my company more than ever. And the best part? I didn't have to do it alone. Unlike my parents' business, where employees were treated as disposable, I built a team that mattered. Sarah, my logistics manager, started as a warehouse assistant and worked her way up. Maria, my head of customer service, had been rejected by countless companies before I gave her a chance. These weren't just employees. They were partners in success, people who believed in the vision, who understood that success wasn't about a last name. It was about hard work, integrity, and resilience. And because of that, we didn't just grow, we thrived. A year later, I stood in a grand ballroom, the sound of applause echoing around me. My company had just been named the fastest growing e-commerce brand of the year. As I stepped onto the stage, award in hand, I took a deep breath and turned to the microphone. A few years ago, I was told I wasn't leadership material, that I was too rigid, too serious, that I didn't have what it takes to be successful. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I smiled, letting the moment build. Well, I'm standing here today because I refuse to believe that. Another round of applause. Success isn't about luck. It's not about charm. And it's definitely not about being born into the right family. I paused, my gaze sweeping over the audience. Success is about persistence. It's about refusing to let people define you. It's about knowing your worth, even when no one else does. The applause erupted into a standing ovation, but I barely heard it over the pounding of my heart. Because this moment, was what I had fought for. Not their approval, not their validation, just this. The knowledge that I had built something on my own, that I had won. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's winning without them. If you loved this story, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Have you ever proved someone wrong in the best way possible? And of course, subscribe to my channel, Revenge with Thrill, for more thrilling stories of love, betrayal, and the ultimate payback.